Welcome to the scurrychurchofchrist.org. The Bible says in Hosea chapter 4 and verse 6, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Please don't let this happen to you. Feel free to contact us at scurrychurchofchrist.org, where you can visit us, and any Bible question that you may have, we will do our best to answer. We are so glad you decided to visit us. Good morning.
Good morning.
Last week we discussed gossip and how detrimental it is to our salvation. Those who engage in those things will not make it to the heavenly realm. And we saw the difference, how we make a difference in these things. We saw last week that the Bible talks about to separate from immoral people with intentions to save their soul. It says the same thing about a gossiper. So eventually we'll talk about a slanderer, a backbiter. We need to discuss these things because they determine where we end up at the end of time. He says, for every idle word that a man shall speak, he shall give an account in the day of judgment. For by your words you'll be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. So it's very interesting. But I want to show you something as we get into these words. Something about relationships and things we have to be aware of as we deal with each other, people in general. There's something called a triangulation. I'm going to read this. It's when you form a triangle, it's called triangulation. Now watch where I'm going with this. Triangulation is a tactic used to manipulate, to interact between two people who are not communicating directly with each other. Now watch. It is problematic because a third person becomes involved in a situation that should be between two individuals involved in conflict. It says triangulation is a strategy that emotionally unstable people can use to manipulate a situation. It is an unhealthy tactic and can generate toxicity and additional negativity in relationships. Triangulation brings complications and confusion because too many people get involved, increasing the risk of additionally hurtful behaviors. Triangulation. So what he's saying, basically, a triangulation, if you and I are considered a dyad, two in a relationship, and you and I have a conflict, you and I have an issue with each other. There's a conflict. Now notice what I'm saying here, that the issue has come and it's causing anxiety. It's causing emotions. Now remember, if you and I are together and things are going well, there's no anxiety, that we're having a wonderful time. But there's an issue that comes on the scene that causes stress and anxiety. And what happens when I go to someone else, instead of dealing with the issue that's causing me stress and all these problems and anxiety, I go to someone else and I include them in my problems, which now we have what we call a triangle. That's a triangulation. And it's what happens in most cases. We have to be careful that a person, when we have issues and conflicts and that cause anxiety, remember what I said, that when the anxiety gets hard, the emotions are really high, and the stressful is really high, it causes us, now watch what I'm telling you, it causes us to seek help to relieve the stress, not to relieve the issue. Watch. So when I'm talking to you, as soon as I include you in my dyad, my relationship, and I tell you about the issue, but I'm coming to you in most cases because I need to relieve some stress, some anxiety, not dealing with the issue. And so then the person on the other person who has the issue, we have not resolved it. And so now they go to someone else, and now you have a triangle over here, and you have a triangle over here, and the issue has not been resolved. What is the problem? The issue is the problem. The issue causes a separation, but the issue is not being resolved because we have formed a triangle. Watch. That's a problem. Notice what else it says about triangulation. The attention is drawn away from the issue at hand. See? The attention is drawn away from the issue at hand. The conflict between two people in a relationship. See? The attention is drawn away from the issue at hand, comma, the conflict between two people in a relationship. So the attention is drawn away from the issue at hand. See, the extra member brought into the triangulation can feel pressure or manipulated as they are brought into the conflict. What he's saying is that what happens is that when the attention is drawn away from the issue at hand, so you're not dealing with the issue, and so you draw this other person in. And see, they feel pressured. It's like the way you think about that. When you go into someone, when you have an issue and you really stress about it, and you're pulling someone into that conversation, it's the way are you going in to talk about the issue? Are you going in because you want the issue resolved? Or are you going in other words, probably inadvertently, not knowing, becoming manipulative? See, it's like I don't want the issue resolved. I want to make my point. Watch. I want to make my point, or I want to show you. I want to show you my innocence. I want to show you that I know what I'm talking about, and I want to put someone else down. But notice all of this is coming from the issue. So I'm not going to. It's like when a person goes to a therapist or a counselor. In most cases, they want to get the issue resolved. Like you have a family counselor, family therapist. A lot of times when they head that way, sometimes they really want to get the issue resolved. So they go in there, they discuss the issue. You with me? Now you have to be careful because what happens if you don't do that, people are not coming to us discussing the issue. They want to come to us discussing themselves or proving their innocence. And then what I want you to see, the issue that causes the separation is still there. It never gets resolved. And what happens when the issue never gets resolved, the separation is always going to be there. And sometimes we don't think like that. We don't realize what we have done. And so that's why we have to be careful. When someone comes before us to discuss an issue, don't become part of the negative triangle. In other words, don't lean to that side. Be careful what you're doing and what you're saying. And I watch what people say when they come to me and how they handle themselves and why they're coming to me. Do they want to discuss the issue? Do they want to resolve the issue? Or what are they trying to prove here? And that's what he says. The attention is drawn away from the issue at hand. The conflict between two people in a relationship, see, the extra member brought into the triangulation can feel pressure or manipulated as they are brought into the conflict. In some cases, triangulation is an intentional effort to manipulate a situation in favor of the manipulator. It may involve turning people against each other, making someone else look like the bad guy, or creating emotional confusion in the communication. Sometimes triangulation is unintentional, or people may not realize the impact of their behaviors. Individuals may employ triangulation strategies in an effort to avoid confrontation or difficult circumstances. So they don't want to deal with the issue. See? They don't want to deal with the issue. The issue is too much. It's too much conflict, too painful. And now what, I'm going to show you. Now, the reason why am I doing this? We have to be careful. Watch this. I'm going to deal with this. The type of persons who engage in triangulation often demonstrate passive-aggressive tendencies and lacks assertiveness. In other words, they don't want to deal with the problem directly. It's done indirectly. Now watch. Watch this. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 6. I'm going to show you something, how we have to be very careful as we deal with each other, as we deal with people in our society. In Proverbs chapter 6, we're going to move around a little bit. Notice Proverbs chapter 6 and verse 16. There are 6 things which the Lord hates, yes, 7 which are an abomination to him. Let's go to verse 19. A false witness who utters lies and who spreads strife among brothers. Watch. So God hates the separation. The Bible says 6 things which the Lord hates. And so now you have in verse 19, a false witness who utters lies and one who spreads strife among brothers. That is done with the mouth. It's a conversation. And when someone, now watch this, catch it. When someone engages in that behavior, what happens? They're going to bring another person in. See, when strife comes, they're not dealing with the issue. They're going to bring another person in. As soon as you're bringing another person in, you are forming what we call that triangle. And the triangle be negative, it can be positive. If the triangle is negative, then in other words, you're not trying, when it's negative, you're not trying to resolve the issue. You become part of the strife because you may favor that particular individual. Watch this. So he says God hates division, and we have to be careful. Now watch. Let's go to Romans chapter 1 and verse 9. Romans chapter 1 and verse 29. Romans chapter 1 and verse 29. Stay with me. We're moving around a little bit. Romans chapter 1 and verse 29. Watch this. Romans chapter 1 and verse 29. Romans chapter 1 and verse 29. He says, being filled with all unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, evil, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit. See the strife there. Deceit, malice. They are gossips. It's right there. Gossips. We talked about that last week. Slanderers. We'll talk about that another time. Haters of God, insolent, arrogant, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, without understanding, untrustworthy, unloving, unmerciful. That fits in that category. And although they know the ordinance of God, they know the ordinance of God, that those who practice such things are worthy of death. They know that. They not only do the same, but also give a hearty approval to those who practice them. So we have to be careful when someone approaches us, and because it's almost like I can inadvertently, not knowingly, give approval to someone who's practicing this thing. And then also not understanding how detrimental it is to my salvation. The person who does this, and also I find myself doing that, and I'm doing the same thing because I'm really close to them. I respect them, and I'm doing what they're doing, saying what they're saying, not realizing I'm caught in this triangle. And it's a sin against God. So I've been living my life doing well. Now I'm caught up in sin, and the wages of sin is death. And I really don't see it because I'm not aware of it. Remember this. When people have issues, they're looking for someone that will, a lot of times, instead of dealing with the issue in this triangle, they're looking for someone that would lean towards what they want you to lean towards. In other words, they're looking for someone that would listen to them and agree with them. You know how I know that? Because a lot of times what happens, when the person who wants to help them and doesn't agree with them, they will not go to that person. See, because that person wants to deal with the issue. They go over here to find someone that will agree with them because they really don't want to deal with the issue. They want to prove their point. But the issue is still there and it's causing separation, and God is not pleased. And so the issue has to be resolved. See, let's watch this. 1 Timothy chapter 5. 1 Timothy chapter 5. 1 Timothy chapter 5. See, watch. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 13. We looked at this last week. At the same time, they also learn to be idle as they go around from house to house, not merely idle, but Also gossip and busybodies, talking about things not proper to mention. Therefore, I want the younger widows to get married, bear children, keep house, give the enemy no occasion for reproach. For some, listen to this, for some have already turned aside to follow Satan. We looked at that last week. So what they're doing, listen, they're going from house to house. Notice what they're doing. At the same time, they also learn to be idle as they go from house to house, not merely idle, but also gossip and busybodies, talking about things not proper to mention. Therefore, then he said, look at verse 15. Verse 15, for some have already turned aside to follow Satan. So that gossip, that behavior, you are following Satan. But notice what I want you to see here. They had just formed a triangle. Somebody knocks on your door. Somebody gives you a call. And here's the gossip. A lot of times when people do that, they see it's an issue, whatever it may be. But now as soon as you open the door, you start talking about that situation. You're caught up in it. You agree with them. You're doing this and doing that. You just formed a triangle. And what you're doing is causing the issue. In other words, it's moving further and further and further and further away from the issue. You get it? Further and further and further away from the issue. And we have to be careful because we become part of it and part of it and part of it. And we're helping them to move further and further and further. Well, you don't believe me? When someone comes to you and they talk to you, they want to discuss something that's going on, this is how you tell if their heart is right. Stick to the issue. Help them see what they're doing within this issue. Help them to see how they are, the conflict, how they're involved in the conflict, and agree with them only when it's something that's scriptural, but be kind, but make a stand and say, this is not right, what you're doing is not right, and see, get to the issue, and then you'll see if they really want to deal with the issue or if they really want you on their side. Now, you're listening, but I want you to know something. This happens all the time, not only in the church. It happens at work. It happens at school. It happens in families. It happens all the time. You let a husband and wife have issues. They're doing so well until there's an issue. And the issue causes soulless anxiety and emotions. And so they have to discuss it because remember what I'm telling you, they want to get rid of the anxiety. They want to get rid of the stress, not the issue. And so they're going to find someone like mama or daddy, you see, to discuss the issue. And so, in other words, you take a mama that favors her daughter, what happens? This is my poor child. And so now they have a discussion. They form an alliance. And so now the other person's over here. The issue is over here. And the daughter feels wonderful, but the issue has not been resolved. See, that's, when I look at the book of Acts chapter 12, and I look at, watch this, let's move around a little bit. Acts chapter 12. And humans, the apostles who were men of God, they were still human. Jesus was the only one that has a divine spirit. He had a divine spirit while he walked the earth, not the apostle Paul. Look at Acts chapter 12. Notice this unity here. They were unified. Watch this. Acts chapter 12, verse 12. I'm going to skip over some things. And when he realized this, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, who was also called Mark, where many were gathered together and were praying. So John Mark was with them. See, there's a relationship there. Look at verse 25. And Barnabas and Saul returned from Jerusalem when they had fulfilled their mission, taking along with them John, who also was called Mark. Relationship, close relationship, traveling together, working together. Look at chapter 13 and verse 13. Now Paul and his companions put out to sea from Paphos and came to Perga and Pamphylia, and John left them and returned to Jerusalem. So John left. Here's the issue. John left. Look at this. So there's the issue, right? John left. Look at chapter 15, verse 36. Chapter 15 and verse 36. So John left. There's the issue. Everything is going well. Everything is going just fine. So John decides to leave. So that's the issue. And in chapter 15, verse 36, watch. Watch this. And after some days, Paul said to Barnabas, let us return and visit the brethren in every city in which we proclaim the word of the Lord and see how they are. And Barnabas was desirous of taking John, who called Mark, along with them also. But Paul kept insisting that they should not take him along take him along who had deserted them. So Paul didn't forget. So here's the issue. Barnabas says, let's take him. Paul says no. So the issue causes a separation. There's the issue. That's two. That's two. You see, and there arose such a sharp disagreement that they separated from one another. And Barnabas took Mark with him and sailed to Cyprus. Eventually they got along. They resolved it. But I want you to see here, you see, we have to listen to me, people. I want us to see here issues, problems, what causes separation. That's what it is. And the trick of Satan is to get us further and further away from dealing with the issue. There are people who never get along. They will forever be separated because they haven't dealt with the issue. Their relationships, marriages and whatever couples, whatever, work relationships, just whatever, athletic relationships. It's like people just hold grudges for years and years and years. Why? Because the issue was over there hiding behind the curtain. They just don't deal with the issue. They're going everywhere else instead of dealing with the issue. Even let me tell you something. People are very interesting. When you want to deal with the issue and people don't want to deal with the issue, remember what I said? Some people just don't want to deal with that. They just don't want to deal with it. In other words, they rather do what they just don't want to deal with it. And when I want to deal with an issue that someone doesn't want to talk about, and I can't make them talk about it, that's when I go to God in prayer. I let God handle that. And I pray that God's providence will open up a door so maybe we can talk, because God can do that. You see? Now, before I close, let me show you something. How do I not let this happen? Watch this. Turn to Judges. Judges chapter 4. Judges chapter 4. How do I not let this happen? Hopefully you can get this. The third, when there is the dyad is two people in a relationship, and I am called in. At that time, a triangle is formed. Listen to this. I try to become the issue. Watch. I try to become the issue. Now remember, it's difficult because when there's an issue, remember what I said in the beginning, a lot of times when they're looking for a savior, looking for help, is to release some of that stress or anxiety. And a lot of times the tears and everything comes along with that, and you can lean towards the emotions and not the issue, if you're with me. So now I'm not focused on an issue, I'm focusing on the emotions. So how I do that, I have to try to stay focused, because remember, when the issue comes to me, it's very, very emotional. So notice what she does in Judges. Watch. In Judges 4:4-5. Now Deborah, watch it, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at the time. Listen, she used to sit under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the sons of Israel came up to her for judgment. See? When the people came up for judgment, she focused on the issue. That's what she did. That's a smart judge. She focused on the issue. So that's what you do. You focus on the issue. You have to ask God for wisdom, but how do you always go back to the issue, because that's what needs to be resolved. You can deal with someone's emotions, their anxiety, but the issue has that emotion, that anxiety is there until the issue gets resolved. So we have to always go back to the issue. That's what Deborah does. See? Look at Galatians chapter 2. Go to Galatians chapter 2. Stay with me. Go to Galatians chapter 2. Watch this. Galatians chapter 2. Look at verse 11. But when Cephas came to Antioch, I opposed him, this is Paul, to his face, because he stood condemned. For prior to the coming of certain men from James, he used to eat with the Gentiles, that's Peter. But when they came, those Jews, he began to withdraw and hold himself aloof, fearing the party of the circumcision. So notice this. And the rest of the Jews joined with him in hypocrisy. Notice this. So Peter, you have to be careful. Peter is eating with the Gentiles. That's scriptural. Here comes the Jews. He sees them. And so he gets up and walks away from the Gentile, because in the Mosaic system, you should, in other words, in his traditions, in the Mosaic law, there was eating these meats and eating with the Gentiles, etc. So part of that was the Jewish law and his traditions. But he's showing, watch this, he's showing his hypocrisy, because he's eating with the Gentiles and eating certain foods because he's obeying the law of Christ. But then when the Jews come around, he gets up and he leaves. He eases on out the way, and others are caught away in that hypocrisy. Watch this. Others are caught away in that hypocrisy. You still don't get it? See what happened? He became a hypocrite, and others also were caught up in that hypocrisy. So he began to sin, and others were sinning also. But watch. What does Paul do? If you read the story, Paul deals with the issue. See? He says, verse 14, but when I saw that they were not straightforward about the truth of the gospel, I said to Cephas in the presence of all, if you being a Jew live like the Gentiles and not like the Jews, how is it that you compel the Gentiles to live like a Jew? Now notice this, you have two apostles here, two ranking apostles, pillars of the church. And what does Paul do? Paul doesn't take Peter's side. Remember, he's an apostle, Peter's an apostle. And what does he do? He looks at the issue and he's telling them, this is what you're doing is wrong. And see, he's focusing on the issue. And because of that, you read later on in the Bible, Paul says, or rather Peter says, my beloved brother Paul. See, Paul could have decided at that point to lean towards Peter because they were both apostles. No, what he does, instead of forming this negative triangle, he became, in other words, there's a triangle formed here, but he becomes the issue. He focuses on the issue because that is the problem. Watch this. Luke chapter 10. And I'm going to quickly show us some more things that we need to be aware of as we close. Luke chapter 10 and verse 38. I like this one. Luke chapter 10 and verse 38. Now as they were traveling along, he entered a certain village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. And she had a sister called Mary, who moreover was listening to the Lord's words, seated at the table. So Mary's listening. But Martha was distracted with all her preparations, and she came up to him, that's Jesus, and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the serving alone? Then tell her to help me. See? There's a problem. You got Martha, and you got Martha and Mary. There's two sisters. There's an issue. It's a dyad. What they're trying to do is bring Jesus into it. They're bringing him into it. And notice what she does. Notice what she does. But Martha was distracted with all her preparations, and she came up to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the serving alone? Tell her to help me. See, in other words, she's bringing him in, but she's bringing him in because she wants him in for herself. The issue is not going to be, see what she's doing? Tell her to help me. But the Lord answered and said, read it. He stuck with the issue. He told her what the truth is. But now once you see the influence here, what she tried to do, Lord, tell her to help me. Emotions. Jesus, no. At that time, that's when the triangle is formed. So here's what things to help us as we grow in the Lord. Remain neutral. When someone comes to you or wants to talk about something, think about, do they want to discuss the issue? Remain neutral. Ask questions to help the person see their contribution to the problem. Ask questions. Don't talk about the people. Don't talk about the people. Encourage them to talk to the people. Encourage the two people involved in exchange to communicate directly about the issue. Now, I like this one. Keep as few people as possible in the conversation. Try not to have side conversations. Communicate directly with the person. Now, let me give you the key before I close. Matthew chapter 18. Matthew chapter 18. And I know you know where I'm going with this. This is a strong verse from the words of Jesus. Matthew chapter 18 and verse 15. If your brother sins, go and reprove him in private. See, you're dealing with the issue. That's a dyad, that's two. In private, if he listens to you, you have won your brother. That's what you're doing. You're dealing with the issue. That's the separation. But if he does not listen to you, take one or two more with you, so that by the mouth of two or three witnesses every fact may be confirmed. You're still dealing with the issue. The issue would need to be resolved. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen even to the church, let him be to you as a Gentile and a tax gatherer. You catching it? In this verse, Jesus is saying, deal with the issue. Why is he saying that? Because the issue causes separation. You and I right now, we love each other. We get along very well. What's going to cause us problems is an issue. That's what it's going to... Sean is going to look like the way he looks. I'm going to look like the way I look. I mean, it's not going to change. But what's going to separate us is the issue. When the issue comes, he's still going to look the way he looks. I'm still going to look the way I look. It's that issue like hiding behind us is causing the problem. And we don't see that. Communication is the key to all of this. Communicate. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. Humble. It's like it takes humility to communicate. That is the key. Now, what I want us to see, don't get caught up in it. See, when someone comes to you and they have a discussion about things, and you have to figure out, why are they coming to me? And listen to what they're talking about. I'm speaking in general here. It happens all the time. Be careful how you open your mouth, because you can leave that situation and that person manipulated you, and you're actually encouraging sin and probably don't even know it. See, Troy probably knows this better than anybody, being in his position. He has to listen very carefully, because people can be very manipulative. If you're not careful, you're caught up in a triangle. You don't even know it. You're trapped. God wants us to be wise. Pray for wisdom. And I want you to understand something. Remember what I just said. Gossip, slander, backbiting, those things cause us to lose our soul. The Bible is very direct. The Bible does not hide it. The Bible is very direct about those sins. So we have to be careful that we don't allow ourselves to be caught up in these things. Always focus on what God requires us to do, and that's all we can do. I love you. If we can help you, please come out. We stand and sing the song for the invitation.